Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is TAETRO, and welcome back to the second episode of TAETRO Talks. Tonight, we're restreaming not only on my channel, but on the 343 Labs channel. So if you don't know, I'm the creative director of 343 Labs, and my guest today is Abe Duque, who happens to be, aside from being a legend, happens to also be an instructor at 343 Labs. So, Abe, can you give the people, I know this is going to be hard for someone with such a storied career as yourself, but can you give the people like a 30-second to 1-minute synopsis of your career to this point in time?
Oh God. All right. Had my first credit on a record in 1989.
Wow.
And yeah, so I was making music in the 80s professionally. It wasn't anything but additional keyboards. That's the credit was I played additional keyboards on the track, on a
What was the
freestyle
name of the
track.
track?
Running Man. Giovanni was the name of the artist, and I was the additional keyboard player on that.
Nice.
And Victor Calderon was the producer on that, and Gene DeFosse. They were a team at that time called Program Two, and from that point I started to produce on my own, started to release, started my first label, started my second label, started my third label. Uh, got hooked up with some people in Europe, namely Austria and in Germany. Started to release on a Munich-based label called Disco B. Had good times there, then kind of jumped off a little bit, then went back into it, started up my latest label, which was Abe Duque Records.
But you're
Had a
underselling it, I feel. You're underselling it a little. You weren't just like starting
well,
labels and
you
stuff.
said 30 seconds, so I'm trying to like speed
But
it
you
up.
weren't just like this label boss starting all these labels. You were like touring and stuff.
I was touring, I was producing, I was doing tons of things. Yes, you're right.
Tons of
But
things.
so far maybe 12 years have passed since the first record. So we're at the beginning of the 2000s now, and I started again because I quit around, I don't know, around, I guess after September 11th, I quit for a couple of years.
Quit music in
And
general, like the whole industry, all of it.
yeah, I got married, and I figured, all right, I've been there, done that. But then, and I even actually went to work at JP Morgan for a little bit.
Really?
Uh, yeah, I was doing refinishing of furniture at JP Morgan.
Wow.
And but I got really bored. I got really bored there, and I figured that I got to get back in there because it was calling me again. So went back in and started. I asked my wife. I said, "Come on, give me one more year." So she said, "Yeah, okay, one more year. Let's see what happens." And I went crazy for that 1 year, releasing as much as I could, and actually got some traction at the end of the year, enough to like stay in. And it actually became the biggest run that I had. I'd say in the mid of the 2000s, I had amazing run, some pretty big hits, and then big people calling, big productions. Pet Shop Boys wanted me to produce the album,
Wow.
working with the Chemical Brothers, working
Whoa.
with yeah, just big work, lots of work, lots of fun, lots of crazy times, lots of touring. Spent next 10 years or 12 years just constantly touring and living out of a suitcase until my wife got pregnant, and I decided that daddy's on the road is not what I wanted my kids to hear.
Right.
So
And
I said
how old were you when the like resurgence of your career started?
late 30s,
Wow.
early 40s. Yeah. I think I was in the middle point of like the peak around 40, I would say. Maybe a little more.
That's
41, 42.
that's sort of
Yeah.
super different than a lot of people's experiences. Usually people can't come back. Do you feel like
Oh,
what do you think led to that, like come like, I don't know if it was necessarily a comeback because you actually like superseded any of the success you had already had, like how do you explain that? Like that's super rare, it seems.
well, just maybe not knowing any better, and and just being hard headed and just figuring I got to do this, and this is what I can't do anything else. I mean, it was going well at my other job, but I was entirely bored. I couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. I had to jump off, and it was lucky that I actually made it work. Could have gone the other way. I could have lost a great job.
For sure. Was it hard to take that risk?
Of course, but I really didn't have, I had, it was a risk, but I didn't have kids and other things like that. Now it'd be harder to take a jump like that. Plus,
Right.
I'm much older, and I've really been there and done that at this point. So I don't know if I want another comeback. Although sometimes I feel like it's pulling me back in. And
Totally.
I actually, yeah, sure, why not? Let's see what happens. I'm actually working on stuff right now. I have a guy I'm working with in Arizona. His name is Marco, and we have a project together, and we're actually moving forward with this Duque di Prima project. That's what we call it.
Nice. All right, I'm going to
Yeah.
dip into chat a little bit and see who's here. What's going on, everybody? If you're in chat and you have questions for Abe along the way, let me know. But I'm checking. I see Talita is here. What's up? Aralim Figueroa, what's going on? Tesla Effects on. What's going on, folks? Thomas actually sent me the Restream chat link, so I can actually cover the chat in all places, not just my own channel, I think. So if you're in the chat on the other outlets, let me know because I'm jumping into it now to check in with you all. But I'm super stoked that people are turning out tonight. Like I said, if you have questions for Abe, like we're going to get into some stuff. Abe's going to tell me about stuff that I don't even know to ask about, like in this whole modular world that you're in. Like I'm so not on that boat that like I feel like even in my world, like the YouTuber quote unquote world, like everybody's in on the modular. Do you want to maybe talk a little bit about like how long you've been doing
Oh,
working with modular? Like
well, okay. Well, I've been working with synthesis as a whole forever, but
right.
the whole modular, at least, well, in this iteration of like Eurorack styled modular, I mean, that's been actually new. Um, I have a friend, the guy that I work with now making music. He was really deeply into the modular, and he really pushed me in that direction. I actually wanted to resist. I didn't really want to go there.
That's where I'm
I
at.
had it. Yeah, I didn't really see a need. I've been collecting gear all my life. I've had all sorts of drum machines and synthesizers, and you name it, I've had it or still have it. And I thought that that was my thing, and I was fine with that. And I didn't really think that I needed to go into this. And I kind of looked down on it a little bit. Thought it was kind of trendy, kind of like hipstery, kind of just something to make you look cool. So I didn't
And
do it.
now I
But
look at your
Marco,
background and you are looking real cool because all that cool stuff in the background.
right? Yeah, some of that stuff looks really cool. That's true. But yeah, I really do owe it to Marco because he really kind of was relentless in pushing, and he's a freak. You should see his setup. I mean, he's a modular freak, and
It tends to be
you hang
like
around
that.
with somebody. What's that?
Doesn't it like tend to be like that? Like a lot of folks, like once they get into modular, you can like see the progression of the addiction,
It
you
takes a
know?
certain type of person. It takes like an obsessive personality to be able to get into it. And I have that gene. I have that gene. It just hadn't been triggered by this before. There's a few barriers to get into it. I mean, even as much as I knew about modular, there really it's not easy to get going with it. It's a lot harder when you buy a synth. The architecture of the synth is already kind of predetermined for you, and you're ready to just get in there and start making great sounds. So the gratification is more or less instant.
Right.
When you play with modular stuff, it's not as it's very frustrating. You'll spend a few evenings just making the most rudimentary of sounds and feeling really down about the process. And if you don't see it through, if you don't continue to explore that, and to a point where you make a breakthrough and now you're able to get things going, and you understand the flow, and it's a very different way of thinking about making music, because the flow of the sound becomes more important than the actual writing of the parts. The
Right.
writing of the parts takes a back seat to like the flow of the actual texture of the sound, and
Is
and that's what I really come to enjoy about it. Yeah.
is it more of a like approaching music from sound design first rather than melody and harmony? Like, is that the hook?
Well, yeah, maybe you could say that. But sound design is almost an accident in modular world, meaning that you can get at what you want to get at. You could have ideas about what you should be doing, but eventually on the road to that, you will stumble upon things that you like, really unexpected things. And a good modular musician tends to capitalize on these discoveries, because a good modular musician, or one that's
Modular
been
magician, I
playing
think you were right.
magician, yeah, right, or one that's been playing with this stuff for a long enough time, knows that if they don't capitalize on that, what they found or what they have right there, and then if you come across something amazing sounding, if you don't use it right there and then, you're just not going to ever have it again, and it's gonna be gone. It's just gonna be a thought that you had that once. So you tend to like let the process kind of suck you in as well.
Right.
You're trying to drive the car, but the car has a mind of its own a bit, and you kind of go with it if you want to have a better outcome.
I can see how that could be quite alluring for sure. In the chat, so Affexon's asking, can we hear Abe's music? Yeah, Thomas, can you drop some links in the chat so people can kind of throw it on in the background? Maybe SoundCloud or something. That would be cool. And we have a question from Talita. So this is like an age-old question, much debate about, but Talita is asking about quality difference between analog and digital. And you, as somebody who's very much in both worlds, I would say. Like, would you consider yourself like kind of fluent in both
Oh,
analog and
I'm
digital worlds?
definitely in both worlds. I'm not either or. I know a lot of people are that way. Some people say I'm in the box and leave me alone.
Right.
Everything can be in the box. Some people say I'm only analog and leave me alone, because there's nothing like analog. To me, they both of them are just ways to make amazing music. And I, a lot of the times try to put that together. In my latest explorations with Eurorack, I've just been kind of doing it in the Eurorack and not really, doing it together with the box, and maybe a little bit of processing after, or maybe just editing some of the takes that I make. But the quality of the sound, I wouldn't say is better or worse. I think it's different. There's absolutely amazing sound that can come out of a computer, and there's the quality of sound that you can get out of all that crazy stuff back there, that you can't get out of a computer, maybe just because you don't know how to access that insanity that
Right.
is that chaos back there. That's what happens with Eurorack, the chaos that arises, and all the microtonal stuff that you just don't have control over. And perhaps the thing about the computer sound is that you have maybe too much control over what's actually happening, and therefore it gets boring
Right.
because of that, or can tend to get boring because of that. And in the case of this stuff, it's microtonal and kind of wild, and has its own kind of flavor to it that you can't really reproduce if you try to do it on purpose.
That's the most diplomatic answer. Usually people are very one way or the other, but it's refreshing to hear a take that's like, no, both are good. Both are great, you know?
No, I'm not even being diplomatic at all. I'm actually totally, adamant about this position. I think that you're missing out if you take any one of those positions. I feel like you should keep a mind. I mean, you should really be agnostic about everything.
For sure.
You should really be, just open-minded to seeing what you can get. I've run taste tests with, like, a certain like Arturia has these plugins. They do these classic synths, and with my friend Marco, actually, my friend Marco did this. He said, "Hey, this thing is so good," and we both have mini Moogs and so on. And so he's like, "Check this out. I'm going to record something with the Mini Moog, and I'm going to record with the Mini Moog Arturia VST,
Right.
and I'm going to just take the same setup and just play it back, and I'm going to give you. He sent me these recordings where the recordings would be kind of like, all right, he wouldn't tell me what was what, and he said, all right, now tell me what is what. I couldn't,
Yeah.
both of them.
I've had similar experiences at NAMM. Like one year, there was a certain plug-in booth. They had one where you go in and you push it. You actually like had to walk through. You put headphones on, and it doesn't tell you which one you're listening to. And you go with a scorecard, and you mark A, this is analog, or B, this is digital. And you go through, and like mine was obviously completely wrong. Like it's just like we're in a world now where you can easily recreate this stuff. Jumping back into chat, a few questions here. Let's see. I saw a question earlier. You talked briefly when we were kind of running through that, doing that career rundown at the beginning, like running labels and touring and all this and coming back to your career and hitting a peak. How do you, obviously we're in a different industry now, and I'm curious to hear your take on that, but like, how did you get your start in the industry? Like, what was your foot in? And I don't mean like the first time you picked up or started making music or anything. I mean, like, what was the first step that you took that made music your career? Like, what was that first initial, like, okay, now this is real. What was that first step like?
All right, well, quitting my job was basically the first real step.
Mm-hmm.
I used to work with my uncle making deliveries. This is earlier on, before I had in my first kind of wave. Uh, I think I was 23, and I said, hey, if I'm going to do this right, I'm going to just go all in, and if I'm going to fail, I better fail quicker than just kind of doing it half-assed for a
Right.
while. So I called my uncle. I said, hey, thanks for the job, but I got to turn in my notice. That was when it was real, and then it got too real because it was horrible. I couldn't get any traction at all. Uh, but I think the moment that really gave me some understanding that this was going to take was when I started to meet people that would give me opportunities, and I think it boils down to that. Still, it's just really, and it's always about who you know.
Right.
I met a few people here in New York. Luckily, I live in New York, where a lot of people visit, and I met a few Europeans, a couple of people like a guy from Austria, Patrick Bolsinger, who was an amazing musician and had an amazing label in the '90s, and still makes really great stuff. He's an instructor at Red Bull Academy at this point. Although I don't know if the Red Bull Academy is still on. I heard something
I
about
think
it.
they are. I think it's still happening to an extent.
Right, but he meeting him, introduced me to a whole lot of people, introduced me to label owners, and once I made that connection, then I was able to show my art and have a platform for it to kind of take traction. Before that, and it's the same now. If you don't get it to the right person's ears, and you're not gonna have that, these opportunities, no matter how talented. Sadly enough, no matter how talented you are, if you don't meet the
Right.
right people, and I think meeting the right people is really key.
Who, I don't mean like who specifically, what are their names, but can you just talk about maybe like I met this person and then it set off this chain of events, like
Oh,
like kind of like
I
what's
could tell you a few people that were like that. For example, DJ Hell. DJ Hell, uh, like DJ Hell, I met him earlier on in Munich, and actually I met him in New York, and it was we became friends. When Hell noticed that I had a little bit of traction going on, he tapped me to produce his New York Muscle album, and that he had so many interesting people on that album. Uh, that blew things up for me because Hell at that point, he was the kind of poster boy for the Electro Clash at that time.
right?
He was like on German GQ magazine. It was like a big thing. I don't know if you guys know about the Electro Clash, that like a late '90s, early 2000s sort of phenomenon. Was a throwback to like the '80s Italo disco and kind of early electro sound. But because of that, came the offer from the Pet Shop Boys to produce their album. And because of that, the Chemical Brothers thing came, and because of that, it just cascaded into a bunch of different opportunities. So I think DJ Hell was a very instrumental person in making things happen for me, for sure.
Right. It seems like, I guess it's different eras, but a lot of it came from in-person networking, going to places, meeting people face to face, kind
Yeah,
of
for
like
sure.
a lot different than it is today, where a lot of people are using social media to be connected. Like, what do you think about like what's going on today, and how do you think it is somewhere in the middle now? Like, there you can do a little bit more online, and but is in person still valuable? Like, is that style of networking
I, I,
like
I, I, I don't know. I mean, yes, you're asking me a question that I ponder on about all the time. I
we all
just,
do? Yeah.
it is, I think about there's always, so, one thing I've noticed is no matter what, since the time that I started until now, which is, mid 80s to like now, um, there's always been filters that hold people back from succeeding or getting any traction. Uh, in the 80s, the filter would have been the studio. The studio, there was no laptop studio. There was
Cost a lot
no
of money.
computer even, to speak of. I mean, computers started to appear in the late 80s in studios. They were just running really rudimentary MIDI action. And you had to have a big studio with tape machines. And I mean, it was just a gigantic investment. And in order to have anything happen, you really had to spend lots of effort and time. And even then, after a year of like collecting every piece of equipment you could and trying everything you could, you had a demo. And it was good enough to like maybe get you a deal to get you a better demo. Right.
Oh,
And then after that, one day a label would sign you and then give you the deal that will let you go into the real studio and re-record that record. So if you could imagine then, that was super hard. But if you had a record, any record at that time, you could fly. You could just go and do whatever you wanted. Now everybody could make records. They could sit on the toilet and make a record, but uh, but the filters are different. Now you have the sea of people that you got to get through, especially in social media, the sea of social media that you have to kind of, you have to navigate through that to like, make a breakthrough. I still think what you said earlier about personal interactions and people that still mean a lot.
for sure.
You could still meet the right person. You could just, hey, get chummy or become a buddy with a person that has a gigantic label, and they might say, hey, come on, put it on my label, and suddenly, poof, there you go, you blew up.
Right.
So personal interaction can't be discounted. I don't know enough about social media to diss it or to praise it. I try to these days I stay away from it as much as I can.
Tell me about that.
Uh,
Why that? Is it just kind of a resistance to the change and
It isn't. It's. I have better things to do with my time.
okay.
I have social media accounts. I have Instagram and Facebook, I guess, and Twitter, which is really funny because I think I could count the amount of tweets on one hand that I've had, but I think I have like I don't know, 3,000 Twitter followers or something like that.
Right.
But I don't see how it really helps at all to play the game because it's a game. It's not really to me. It's not really a one-to-one, of what's happening. It's just a finding leverage and finding a way to make it, to get your attention and to convince people that you are the real deal, and then succeeding. Which I don't have time for that game, and it's the
Because you've already
game
done
has
it,
become
basically.
part. What's that?
You've already kind of done it. I think you came up in this renaissance of, well, regardless of how the industry was when you came up, you are now entering this new world with already having, quote unquote, made it, or having a reputation and having a storied career. So you enter into it
Right.
now, like you said, with the 3,000 some odd Twitter followers. Like, I do social media all day, every day, and YouTube being my biggest outlet, having like 79,000 subscribers, I still only have like 1,400 followers on Twitter. So you even saying that, like, you basically brought this whole boat of like a fan base and a community and your whole career, and people know who you are, because you brought it with you into the new era. So I think that's a certain luxury for you to have come up
It
before
is.
it.
It certainly is, but I can't. But I feel, in it itself, though, it's still. I don't. I feel it's hard to get any traction on social media for myself, even at this point. I mean, at this point, people have new heroes. I'm kind of a dinosaur to a lot of people. Now in my current version, I'm more of a teacher than an artist. I was an artist and I can speak of a lot of things and we could talk history and whatever. But right at this moment, my bigger thing is to be an educator, which is great because now I have another platform to deal with, and I love it. I love it absolutely. But I don't need to be necessarily going out there and pushing my numbers on Instagram, getting at more followers, more engagement. Although I understand the whole thing, it's funny to I even make a kind of a not a joke, but maybe a practice of like just being on top of it all, just to understand what's happening, because I can't help it.
Right.
But but I don't want to play the game. I really don't. Not at this point.
I understand that totally. And you bringing up teaching, which is like a great transition to kind of talk about that. Like, I think that is the mark of a great career. And it's really great that you got involved with teaching, because there's so many teachers out there that don't have such an established career and don't have so much experience and kind of went into teaching first, which is fine to a certain extent. But some people start teaching with little to no experience. Meanwhile, we have teachers like you that are teaching with a ton of experience to speak on. How did you? And I'm glad to hear you say you love it too, because there's also people with careers like yours that do not want to do teaching at all. So can you just talk to me a little bit about like the passion behind like the teaching and kind of where it fits for you now in your career?
I wanted to be a teacher even before I was, having a big career in music. If I had another choice to live over life again, I probably would have pursued that more. I don't know.
Hmm.
I didn't. I thought that ship had sailed, because at the point where I'm in my 40s, touring the world, playing festival after festival, I'm thinking, I'm not going to be a teacher now. And when I thought about teaching, I didn't really think about teaching electronic music. I thought about actually teaching in a school, like an elementary school,
Oh, wow.
or something of that
Well, you
sort.
could
I,
still
I
teach the
really
modular
like
stuff to elementary schoolers. I'm sure they'd love the.
I guess I can. I really like the experience of sharing my knowledge and having the rapport with students, to just have that whole thing really gets me going. I'm really happy there. I'm happier there than ever I was, touring the world. Touring the
Wow.
world was actually a depressing time in a lot of ways. Uh, this is the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life. And to like say that I could just keep on doing it, that's amazing. That's, to me, it's super amazing,
That's
because
great.
the reward that you get, I mean, and it's like, it's therapy for me as well. Like, I could be having the worst day in the world, like where a tragedy just happened in my life, and I have to teach a class. I walk into the class. As soon as I start teaching, I click into another mode, and I'm in the zone of teaching. Class is over, and I've even forgotten about all my problems. I'm like walking out of there like, wow, this is great. So I'm lucky. I'm super
Wow.
lucky. I love teaching.
So, and you just came from a class, right? Right to the stream from a
Yeah,
class.
I was having an online class a little while ago. Yeah,
Nice. What was the class?
it was a mixing, extensive 5-day mixing kind of
Very
thing.
cool. Yeah. So chat and anybody's watching or listening, just so you guys know, um, the link if you want to learn with Abe is in the description to 343labs.com, which is the school that Abe currently teaches at, and we are offering 2-day workshops, 5-day intensives, which is what Abe just came from, and also 12 session courses. And I think like now's the best time. Abe, I don't know about you. We're all trapped in our homes. Like, take some online
You know,
courses.
it's funny, but the students that I do have right now,
Hmm.
I've been teaching online for a long time. I used to teach at this other school called Dubspot, which had a really crazy end to it. But I was already teaching online then. And out of all my, so I've been teaching online about maybe 5 years altogether. And out of all the time that I've ever been teaching online, I haven't seen so happy to see me uh,
Right.
people over the internet, students, and happy to be in the class type of situations ever. This is
Because
just
this is
like,
the only
hey, hey.
social interaction that anybody's getting.
Plus, yeah, that, of course, that, but then there's also the fact that they're using their time to do something, and getting their heads out of, not watching CNN all day.
Oh my God, I know. Yeah, so guys, if you all want to be distracted from the world, but actually move your production skills and all that forward, you should definitely check out the link in the description. Just go to 343labs.com, see the courses that we're offering. And I'm sure we'll talk more about what courses you're teaching coming up and all that. But I wanted to talk a little bit about, because I love how you talk about teaching as that outlet. Like, no matter what's happening, no matter what's going on in your life, if you went and taught a class, you'd forget all that stuff. But I think it's so interesting because a lot of artists say like live performance is that for them. But you said that touring was like almost a super depressing time in your life. Do you want to talk a little bit about
Yeah.
that? Like why? Because you've played
Well,
huge festivals and huge clubs and huge shows, and like
yeah,
anybody would envy
right.
that. So I'm curious to hear about like.
Right, but that's true, and you got to be careful who you're complaining around when you're in that situation. The thing is that when I would get on stage, the moment that I would get on stage and do my thing, and that was really like the top of the mountain, and I wasn't depressed on stage ever.
Mm-hmm.
I was in my, I was transcending to another something else
Right.
at that point. But just before that and after that, when you're traveling, when you're in one city one night, in another country, in another city another night, and in another country another night, and you're all by yourself, you're traveling all by yourself. You're sitting around in a five-star hotel in Moscow, twiddling your thumbs, like, "Oh yeah, this is really nice. This is really
Right.
cool," and you can't really share with anybody. After a while, after I guess a dozen years or so of this, I started to like feel a bit empty with the whole process. And look, I know that people will be like, "Oh, shut up," you just don't say that. But I'm being honest. I really didn't.
Right.
I really felt the traveling part of it really kicked my ass. Like I really hated being constantly in airports and on airplanes. And I challenge you to find anybody that's doing this constantly, that's a touring artist that way, that's been doing it for more than 5 years, that can't, understand what I'm saying right now. Everybody would say,
Yeah,
"Yeah, I get it."
I think the younger generation is definitely starting to be more vocal about this, as enviable as it could be to be a touring musician. Like I still see people even in the hip hop community just tweet or say something in an article about like once you get to that hotel room, it's just you. Like that's when it really hits. Like it's lonely.
It's lonely, and it's annoying to travel all the time. Like now, even now that I would say I retired a good 10 years ago now. And even now, I'm super happy never to get on a plane again. Like if I get on a plane, because I still do gigs from time to time. I'll take only like the things I can't deny, like if Berghain calls or if
Hmm.
Trezor calls or something like that. I'll do them, and I've actually been doing maybe 4 or 5 gigs a year. But even then, I get on the plane and I'm getting that little itch again, like, oh, okay, no, come on, relax. It's cool. You're good. This is good. This is happy. This is what you need. A little bit of
Right.
time, touring around.
Do you think it was also
In the
like
first years, it was great. What's that?
do you think it was a little bit like because you talk about getting on stage and like that was the happiest moment? Was it like kind of like a high and then a withdrawal? Like you get on stage and
Total
you're feeling
high,
great.
total high. It was because when you say happy, I was like, really? Is it really happiness, or is it more like a super high? It's like you're
Yeah.
like, yeah,
And then you
yeah,
get off and you're just
So it's like,
deflated.
yeah, and then you're like, okay, cool, all right, that was great.
Right.
First few years of this is amazing. After a while, really shouldn't complain. I really shouldn't complain. And I did what I had to do at that point, which was quit, which was get off the road and find another thing to do. I got lucky with teaching. I got really lucky with teaching.
Yeah. Can you, for some people who don't know in the chat, and I've only heard stories, but I know you talk about gigs you can't turn down in Berghain. Can you just
Hmm.
describe that club for me? Like, I want people to know like the funny stories of like the lines and the who can get in, who cannot get in, and all this crazy stuff.
Yeah, Berghain's it's funny. It's a really great club. They have really great sound system. They have it's a nice location that they're in. They've had very nice music and but with that said, I don't think it's the best club that I've ever enjoyed being in. But they have this door policy that made it all happen for the hype to kind of take hold, which is, they turn down sometimes more people than actually try to get in.
And it's
Or,
like
I
a
mean, they
super
actually get
long
in.
line, right? So like you're waiting forever, and then
Right,
you get to the
right,
door.
right. So it's kind of like the ultimate badge of I'm cool to say I went to Berghain. I know a guy who went to Berlin 3 times to visit. It was a New Yorker, went to visit Berlin 3 times, and each time his mission was to get into Berghain, and 3 times he never got to get in there.
And they just look
So
at
when it
you.
becomes,
They just give you the up and down look, and they go, "Nope."
yeah, not tonight. Let me tell you a funny story. So
Yep.
I played at Berghain in like I don't know, this must have been 2007 or 2006. I played at Berghain. It was already pretty hyped up at that, but it wasn't the ridiculous craziness it is now. But it was already pretty hyped up, and they already had this kind of strange policy at the door. So I played there on the main floor at peak time. This was my peak, and they booked me to play there. And great. Everybody was really friendly to me. All the staff, everything was awesome. I was like, wow, this is a nice place. I really like this place. I'm gonna, play here if they invite me again. And then I had a friend visit me, and they had come to Berlin, and my friend wanted to go to Berghain to visit Berghain, and I had a place in Berlin at that time, and I you know I was the weekend before I had played there. This is the next weekend now, and my friend said, "Hey, let's go to Berghain. I really want to go there." And I'm like, it's late. It's like, it's this. I don't know who to call for a guest list or anything like that. It's like, let's just go there. Let's just go. We'll stand on the line and we'll go in or whatever.
Right.
Whatever. So I get to the front of the line. The guy looks me up and down and goes, "Sorry, you don't fit in here."
Oh
And I was
my
like,
god. The weekend after
"Excuse
you
me.
were on stage.
Last weekend I played on the on the main floor, um, and he's like, "Sorry, no. Are you on the guest list?" I said, "No." He goes, "No, please leave." I was like,
Oh
"Are you
my
serious?
god.
Are you serious?" As I left, I was really angry, and then I told my booking, I don't want to play there forever again. And for the next like few years, I didn't play there because I was mad at them. It's kind of a
Wow.
mistake because everybody that played there at that time became humongous as an artist, like Marcel Detman and all those people that were like I could have been a resident at that time there, and I kind of threw it away being angry, and
That's so funny.
but then like we made up a few years later, and then I started to play there again, and all's good, but
I
it's a
recently
crazy place.
I saw this thing recently on the internet, and this is for chat to like look up to. I see some people in chat have heard of Berghain, some people asking how it's spelled, and they put it in the chat, so that's cool. But I saw this article that was like you can finally anybody can get into Berghain, and somebody had recreated the club in Minecraft, so you can get in. That's funny though. Touring. I want to talk back about touring because I find it fascinating, and I wonder if some of that kind of depression or that not love for touring came from a pressure. Like, was there a pressure to touring because that's where the money making was, like as an artist? Because I think a lot of people struggle with that today. Like, how do you make money as an artist? Most artists tour nonstop, and then it puts strain on family and relationship and all that. The same issues you already talked about. Like, was it like that back then?
Yeah, sure. Touring was a pressure. That whole thing was hard. It's hard to live out of a suitcase and to like remain stable in your head and stable with relationships with friends and family at home, for sure.
Right.
It's hard to explain what's going on to you to anybody. That even friends of yours are just trying to kind of, nobody can relate to your experience at all.
For sure.
So it's not an easy thing to get by. I mean, I feel really dumb for complaining. It sounds like I'm complaining
it's
about
like totally like human thing. Like I wonder, like, how did it, without being like too like personal or intrusive, like how were you sustaining yourself financially as an artist? Was it the majority touring? Was it record sales, place, like
oh,
that kind of thing?
it was definitely well, once there was a point where the kind of doors blew out on everything, and it was like I couldn't stop people from asking me to play, and I couldn't, do enough remixes and all that because everybody wanted a piece of me. It was a good couple of years that they were that heavy, and when that happened, there was no real pressure about financially because remixes would play money, and that time people still paid money for things like remixes and record sales. Even record sales could still were
Not
a big
streams.
thing still.
Not
Not streams at all.
Not 0.00017 cents for a stream.
And not even downloads at that time. I mean, my biggest record that I put out on my label was this record I did with Blake Baxter called "What Happened." It was on vinyl, and we sold, I don't know, 20,000 vinyl. I don't know exactly the number in the end. 20,000 pieces of vinyl. It's a lot of records sold, and that's actual real money.
Right.
That you can, so with that and with all the other, advances that you get for things at that time, it was still okay to make money, even not touring. But then touring started, was being offered, and I was just, hey, why not? So, yeah, touring made money, but also other ways.
Right. I'll tell you one great amount of you touring is, and this is still on the internet as far as I know, you were like one of the original vloggers before vlogging was even a thing. Can you tell me about that?
I invented it, I like to say, but everybody looks at me like I'm crazy when I say that. I said that to you, and you looked at me like, okay, right.
But then I looked it up, and it's 100% true. You were doing this, and it's on the internet, like documented. Like we could probably trace it back.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
I was walking around with a camera like this in like 2006 or 2007, and like as I went through, because it came out of this boredom and like not knowing what to do with myself during the time that I'd be touring. So I was like, I got to do something with myself. So I had this Panasonic Lumix camera with like a Leica lens on it, and it was a pretty good camera for a point and shoot. So I would just start walking around with it and pretending that somebody was filming me, and it was just a funny thing to do. So I'd arrive at the airport, pick me up, and I talked to him like I wasn't holding the camera, and they'd be freaked out a bit, but then they would get used to it. And then I'd walk around and just do everything, go to the gig, set it up at the gig, and then come home and edit the video in like Vegas or something like that, and then put it on YouTube. And then for that time, I mean, if you look at my numbers as far as views right now, it's not huge, but for the time that I had those videos up in the in the mid 2000s, they were huge numbers, because YouTube was just around a couple of years before that, right? And it was so much that the ADE, the Amsterdam Dance Event, they contacted me, and they flew me in as a panelist, as a social media expert, to talk about, because they recognized what I had done with vlogging. I don't know anybody that was doing vlogging before me, actually.
You are the original influencer. You already talked about how you don't want to play the game, but you were playing the game in 2007.
Yeah, but it was another game. I can't play this new game. That's the problem.
But imagine, I feel like if you had kept with it, like you would have been the biggest one. You would have been the first. I guess that is actually proof that doesn't matter if you're the first.
You know what they say, about if you're the first, you're like you lose out. It's not the first. It's not the early adopters or the innovators that actually get the payoff. It's like people that come way after them and know how to tweak it and like hone it better. Those are the ones that get.
So you're one of the forefathers. We'll say you're a founding father of vlogging. How about that? Um, that's so dope. But like hopefully maybe Thomas or somebody, if you're in the chat, if you can, are they on Dubspot's channel? The videos, or they're on your channel?
Well, the Dubspot ones happened after because I wanted to continue that, and then I created a show on Dubspot, which
That's
was like
crazy.
Abe Duque around the world. I forget what it's called, touring with Abe Duque or something like that. And
Somebody,
that was
please.
Dubspot, but that was already like 2011 or 2012. The early stuff was like the stuff I was just doing by myself. That was like, I think like if you look for the Japan ones, those were probably some of the earlier ones, the ones where I first went to Japan and documented that.
All right, chat, go for it. Open a new tab. Go to YouTube. Abe Duque, Japan, touring, something, something. Just look it up. It's there because I've seen it, and I was
Yeah.
amazed by it. But before, like, we're getting a little close to the end here. So, chat, if you have any remaining questions for Abe, please let me know. I'm looking at both chats, or I'm trying my best to look at both chats. It's a lot to juggle. But thanks everybody for hanging out. Renee, you're here. Effexon, you're super active in chat today. Good to see that. Talita, I'm glad you're here. Yeah, Talita says by teaching you turn yourself into a content authority. I think that's true. Like you take all those things that you learned and pass them down. So let's transition back into talking about teaching. How would you describe, because 343 Labs, we have a lot of instructors. How would you describe your approach to teaching? Because you teach all kinds of stuff. You teach like some beginner stuff, intermediate, advanced, like all through. What is your approach to teaching? I know that's a super general question, but take it in
My
whatever
approach,
direction.
right. Well, my approach to teaching is first to set up rapport and to get a real connection with the person that I'm meant to teach. Some people it happens with faster and even more intensely, but I'm pretty good at pretty much getting into people's heads and really pretty much establishing a kind of a connection with them. That's my first goal as a teacher. At that point, then I can transmit better the information that I have. I can really understand what they need, understand their pain, even their struggle, their challenges, and I can sort of give them in an empathic sort of way, kind of what they need. That is my approach towards it. If I didn't have, I'm not the type of teacher that stands up and lectures and doesn't look at the crowd and just is really great with content but doesn't have any any kind of connection. Connection to me is paramount
Right.
over anything else. I need to be able to like feel that I'm everybody that I'm know everybody before I could actually give them what they need. Other
Yeah.
than that, it's like hoping that I have what they need to give, which turns out maybe I do a little bit.
Nice. And what are some of the, let's talk about like some students that you've had, doesn't have to be by name, but like what are some journeys that you're seeing where like, what are some of the problems students are coming in with, problems they want to solve or knowledge they need to find, and then how are they kind of ending? You have any like some success stories of students?
Oh, there's all sorts of success stories. I mean, I mean, I wish I could name them by name, but that's kind of a client sort of
Yeah, yeah, for
confidentiality
sure.
sort of thing. But I have plenty of students that have gone on to do some pretty amazing things. I can't. I wish I could go more into it. Uh, Other than that, there's a lot of common struggles when you look for a teacher to help you do something. It's because you've kind of hit a wall on your own, and that is something that I need to recognize as they come in to try to get them to get over that wall, and maybe I just give them a little lift or a boost, and then get them to surmount that wall.
And do you think now there's so much, like you talk about being on YouTube in 2007, and now there's so much content out there, instructional content. People are going with this type of instruction less and less. But it sounds like your students are having really transformative experiences because of the relationship you develop with a teacher. Like it doesn't seem like it can be replaced.
Well, maybe that's you're in a better position to say. I don't know. Uh, I was afraid. I was at a place called Dubspot, and a lot of the people at 343 came from Dubspot. A lot of the instructors were there, And after Dubspot was done, it was kind of the timing for its fall, and it didn't fall because of any other reason than it just some craziness went down over
Time
there.
for we
But
need another show to talk about that.
yeah, exactly. But the what happened after Dubspot is that I saw a lot of people that worked at Dubspot, a lot of smart people try to continue the whole trend of like teaching online learning and even physical schools, and I didn't see it taking any traction. And I think for a good number of years, it was exactly what you're saying. There was a lot of content out there that people maybe started to think that they didn't need to subscribe to any particular school per se.
Right.
And I thought that I even thought for a little bit, I thought the space was dead, like the whole teaching space would be dead. But 343 has been an amazing experience for me. I had a lot of hope for it, but I can't. I couldn't imagine the type of success that would have come from it going into it. I went into it with full hope and thinking it'd be a little bit of uphill, and it has been uphill, of course. But there's been an amazing kind of community sort of attachment to the whole thing, and I think that's the main word. I think it's the key is it's community.
Right.
The whole 343 experience has been a building of a community or a tribe that gets it and is all like-minded and in the same struggle. And I'm just lucky to be there. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, and on that note, actually, Talita mentions, are you doing a feedback session this weekend?
Sunday. Yeah.
Sunday. Let's talk about that. Like, what's a feedback session like?
Oh, people sign up. They send their material. We play it, and then we discuss. A feedback session. I'm leading the feedback session. This time. We've been doing it for a while. It was started by Nathan Kelly, amazing artist, and
student of yours, right?
Was a student of mine. But at this point, I've learned so much from him. It's amazing that and he really he was I think super instrumental in building this community, the whole community thing, and he it was one of his pets, the feedback sessions, and now I'm going to be heading this one, and there's going to be different people. I won't be always doing the feedback sessions, but this weekend I'll be doing the kind of heading of the feedback session. And what happens is you sign up, you come in, everybody has a track to show. It's like show and tell, and we play it, and then we talk about it. And not only do I talk about it and give them my opinions and ideas for making it better or maybe worse. I mean, it's just an opinion, right? But trying to figure out what they might want to what they could be doing with it. They could take the feedback or not. It's just feedback. And then we do kind of go around the room and do the same thing, listening. Everybody kind of offers their 2 cents when it comes to the feedback, and it's just a way to have maybe a focus group to kind of get a grasp on what's happening with your music, and it's all positive. We're not really looking to be any at all on the negative side. It's not about dissing people or telling people they're not making good music. It's really about positivity and just going forward, moving forward.
That's all.
That'll be this time.
It sounds like the community that we all need right now, and that we're all not able to really have stuck in our homes, So
Right.
It sounds good. So if you guys check the chat right now, or one of these chats, I believe 343's chat right now has a link to the virtual feedback sessions where you can sign up and join. I believe you guys do it over Zoom. If you are not in that chat and you guys are searching for it, go to the 343labs.com website. You'll be able to find it under events. If for some reason you can't find it, DM me on Instagram, DM 343labs on Instagram, and we'll make sure you get the link so you can sign up. We had another mention here. As a former student, this is from a person named Good Housekeeping Records, Inc. I'm not sure if you know who that is, but they said, as a former student, I can tell you Abe is amazing, and he is why I quit finance and began a label and producing. That's high praise. That's huge.
Right on.
But that's really awesome. It's been a good night. And you know what you were saying before we wrap up too much about teaching and online stuff. I really think now that the pendulum has swung. So for a while, it swung towards the internet's direction where there's tons of great content. And, you know, there's still tons of great content, but it's starting to drift back where it's not about the amount that's on the internet. It's more about the personalities. People are drawn to specific teachers, specific people. And it's slowly starting to swing back to like personalization. That's becoming the premium, like the instruction directly with a teacher that you can watch. I really believe that that pendulum is swinging back because it swung so far in the other direction already that now personal human contact is becoming the premium product.
Yeah, you're right. Personalization is the key at this point. You know, with a video, you can watch it and then you can rewatch it and you can watch it again. But one of the things I've learned about being a teacher is that a good teacher or a teacher that's going to be successful is going to be able to keep on explaining things to somebody in different ways until they get it. Like shift from different angles to try to get them to understand what it is that they need to be understanding. Yeah. And if you keep on just giving it to them in the same way, it's maybe not going to click. But if you shift a little bit this way or that way, or come around it from behind until the person gets it, that's the personalization thing. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. All right, well, we're coming to an end here, guys, and make sure, like, even if you want to just dip your toe in and see what the 343 Labs community is all about, go to 343labs.com/events, find the virtual feedback session, and you guys can hang in a Zoom chat with Abe this weekend and get some real serious feedback. I think it's a great way to start. But for now, Abe, what classes do you have coming up?
Oh, let's see. I've started quite a lot recently, so I don't know about any classes that I have exactly.
I think some stuff is coming up early April. Yeah, if you guys go to the website, you'll see.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be new classes coming in, but I really literally started a bunch of new classes, like 3 in the last week or 2, which means we still have to let them run their course before I have enough time to like take on a bunch of new ones.
Yeah,
but there may be something, I don't know. They're always. These days I have time. I'm home, so I can do. Yeah. I can do more classes. So, and I'm happy to do it. So as soon as they come to me and say, hey, what about this? And if it matches up, I'll be jumping in there.
That's right, guys. So go to 343labs.com, check out the course offerings, starting new stuff all the time. And the more demand there is for classes, like if a class fills up, we start more classes. There's all kinds of different classes too: Ableton, Logic, mixing, synthesis. It's for all skill levels and all different varieties of types of production and electronic music and sound design, all that good stuff. But Abe, I want to thank you for being on the show today. Chat, thanks for hanging and having a good time. Make sure you just click the link in the description. And if you go to 343labs.com, or if you have any questions and you want to DM me, you want to DM 343 Labs on Instagram or shoot us an email, that's totally fine too. Open to chatting and talking about the experience. But the virtual feedback session is free this Sunday, so I don't see why, if y'all aren't doing anything this Sunday evening, New York time, you can jump in. But Abe, thanks so much.
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be too many people now.
Yeah, hopefully.
There's a limit, by the way, of how many people we can take in there. So
good to know.
Let's see.
This is really going to drive them there. Go now, folks, because it's limited spots. But Abe, thanks so much for being on the show tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
All right. Have a good night.